nowhere in the world is it as easy to get things done as it is in China. I've got a team in China who's already told me that the big factories that manufacture for the big US brands, they've just sent all their workers on holiday. So they're all but shut down almost overnight.
Wow.
Hey, this is Josh from Product EVHO, and I'm sitting here with Blake from Blueform Media.
Yeah, thanks, man.
And the other day, we got chatting about the tariff situation right now. It's a big topic. A lot of people have strong emotions, strong feelings about it. There's a lot of good information out there and a fair amount of misinformation.
100%.
And so, yeah, we got to talking about, like, what is the real life situation going on in the lives of small business owners that are having to suddenly navigate this new landscape. They're having to become overnight geopolitical strategists to now operate the business that they just took for granted.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and the reason I'm interested, you're like, I own a media company. We're helping the podcasting here at Kiln, and but I have some other clients that are positioned really well to benefit from however the tariffs go. They have solutions. And they're a great company as well. We won't mention them by name, but they're awesome. But I've been working with them through the tariffs, and so I kind of have a lopsided view because they're telling me all the things, but they remain neutral because their software kind of solves that problem for large shippers. But when we were chatting about it, you were saying some pretty like blunt stuff, which I love because I really don't care. Like politically where people are. I agree with a lot of things. I'm kind of in the middle libertarianly.
There you go.
And I just like to challenge and keep my leaders accountable.
For sure. Love that.
And so no matter what president you're behind or not how much you hate them, whatever bias you want to feed your brain at night and your algorithm on your social media, it's just really important that we take a step back, have real discussions, and the guy in the trench is usually knows the most. Like if you want to understand what it's like on the front lines, like you don't go ask the rear admiral.
Yep.
You don't ask the general. You go ask the shell-shocked private, on the lines, right? And that's what I think you've had the most interaction with. So it was fascinating hearing you talk about that. So I hope I can help facilitate some of that information today and pull it out of you and see if it's beneficial for people. So.
Well, I appreciate it. And just for context for people listening, so Product EVHO is a supply chain management company. We do product development and supply chain management, but the supply chain management side has definitely come to the forefront in the last couple of weeks with the tariff situation escalating. And, the first news when they made the announcements, it shell-shocked me as much as anybody else because obviously we've had some escalation in trade tension with China since 2018 in the original aluminum and steel tariffs. And we've been able to navigate them with our clients and figure things out. And then, the 201, 301 tariffs escalated that a bit more. And so we've always been able to just find the way through and figure out the best strategies for small business owners.
And that's aluminum and steel. I'm kind of helping connect the dots here from my mind. That's probably huge. Any type of CNC machining, if you're making parts and workable products, those are usually what prototypes or the final product is made out of, correct?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and I would just challenge anybody to look around whatever room or car or office you're in right now and just take a look at how much metal.
Yeah, like this casing is probably aluminum on this mic, right? And like this whole arm. Yeah, it's kind of. So Mallory's dad, she's on the controls today. He's a master machinist.
Okay.
And he's always talking about metals. And we'll be at a gas station and he's looking at the tiny screws inside of sunglasses, just like marveling, like, how did they do that? Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good point though. So I wanted to clear that up. Like was that the only tariffs back in 2018?
In 2018, those were the initial tariffs that kind of kicked everything off. And then the Section 201 tariffs expanded, and Section 301 basically was the catch-all that, like, nothing else, like everything effectively coming from China had some form of additional tariff on it. But that was, I can't remember the exact dates, but sometime during the pandemic, that whole time was just a blur. There was so much going on. Yeah. But, we've been able to navigate everything. Obviously, the current administration ran on a policy of tariffs, so I think the world was prepared for some type of tariff escalation. And we saw that early on, like right after he took office, with Canada and Mexico, I think, were the first under the gun, which, hitting them with the 25% tariff each was a little shocking since they were our neighbors and we've had the free trade agreement in place with them, whether it was NAFTA or the one that Trump negotiated with them in his first term, the USMCA, I think.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
So shocked, we're dealing with it. And that's always been the process, shocked, but dealing with it. And business owners have ridden every one of those waves. And then Thursday, a couple weeks ago on Liberation Day, when he kind of came out with those global tariffs that were absolutely massive by any standard.
Right.
I think you saw the world react. You saw financial markets react. Not only here in the U.S., but literal global financial markets reacted to that news, because every economist, everybody who's serious about protecting their money understands that a trade war of that caliber and tariffs of that caliber on a global scale will absolutely destroy any economy. And there's historical proof. You got the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930. Mm-hmm. If you remember, it was October 29 when the Great Depression kicked off. But I went back and I personally looked at the S&P and Dow charts from that era, and it was only in recession territory up through around April of 1930. Then the Smoot-Hawley Act kicked in. Oh. It was an average of a 20% tariff against all imports. And basically every economist and historian agrees that act is what drove us into the Great Depression, turned a recession into a depression that affected everybody on the globe.
It's kind of it's largely agreed upon that was the catalyst then.
Yep.
That's the linchpin that just made it happen. They pulled that pin.
That's it.
Cascade.
It was a 67% reduction in global trade.
Wow.
What's interesting is back then, the U.S. was the number one manufacturer exporter in the world.
Wow.
So we had jobs. The supply chain was U.S.-centric then, and imposing those tariffs then still had that implication. It took our unemployment rate from 8% up to 25%.
Right.
And so, yeah, financial markets, I think, rightly freaked out when that happened because there is historical precedent. And if you look at the average cost or the average tariff against all imports today, it's 27%, I believe, so higher. And
wow.
And yeah, you got like 145 against China, 46 against Vietnam, whatever. But if you average total imports, it's 27% is the average tariff. And so, yeah, financial markets absolutely freaked out. Small business owners panicked because not only could they not manufacture their stuff in China, they now couldn't manufacture it anywhere in Southeast Asia, in Mexico, in Canada. The only option was the U.S., but the things nobody's talking about in the U.S. is labor. A lot of people are talking about infrastructure. We don't have the infrastructure set up to manufacture here in the States. The supply chain's not here. And that's true. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but let's just touch on that for a minute. We don't have the infrastructure we did in 1930.
Right.
The supply chain is way more global today than it was then. We're the number 2 manufacturer and exporter in the world behind China, so we're still up there. There's a lot here, but in no means do we have the infrastructure to fully be truly isolationist, protectionist, and have things go well for us. Like it's a global supply chain. And, when it comes to building infrastructure, the best estimates are 5-10 years to have the infrastructure up and going, but the tariffs are here today. So What do you do?
So that's effectively like when the timer starts, if the best estimate is 5, maybe 10 years, that starts now.
And that's if the U.S. government and private companies are investing literal billions of dollars, like immediately, in building that infrastructure. So here's the other challenge that I see domestically that nobody's talking about is the permitting process. So it's one thing to have this on a national stage, this policy of bringing things back and building infrastructure. But if the investment's not there, that's one thing from the U.S. government to invest in that. The other thing is state by state, the requirements for permitting and building are totally different. And
That's
so
true.
You have states that could throw up red flags, and like you have to overhaul that entire permitting process state by state in order to get things done fast enough to actually meet those 5 to 10 year.
And that I'm just thinking of the logistics of that too, because it's kind of a marvel how unified the United States are.
Yep.
Like I can cross state borders without a checkpoint, and I can usually operate normally, right, with some exceptions. But yeah, the business permitting and stuff, that's where the real difference is. I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
So the logistical issue of just, are all states going to sing the perfect same song and change everything like lickety split? We all know that's not how bureaucracy works.
Yeah, never.
Oh my gosh, I can see the problem. So yeah, some states that are really effective at it, they're going to have an advantage.
Yep.
Right. And I guess that's kind of good if you're in those states. Better.
Yep.
Right. You can get that. And I know there are some states, I think it's pretty rigorous in Texas to get permitting and building. And then California is notoriously bad.
Forget it. Yeah.
Done. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Like the time it would take to react to this change. Now you got to swim through the building permits of your state.
Yep.
So some states are better off. Do you think that's going to shift small businesses? Do you think the businesses that do have the, I guess, what would you call it, the flexibility, or they're limber enough to move, maybe they could capitalize on another state being more effective? I don't know.
Maybe. Most likely. I think there's a few other factors to consider. So we talked about the infrastructure, which is being talked about a bit more, how there's some challenges there. The thing that's not being talked about enough is labor. So I've got friends that own manufacturing companies today here domestically, and their bottleneck to growth, even before the tariffs, was never about their ability to get more manufacturing jobs. It's their ability to fulfill.
Yeah, fill the manufacturing
They
job.
cannot, for the life of them, get people to come work. And when they do, it's a revolving door. So HR recruiting is a never-ending process where they'll get people that'll come in, they'll work for 2 weeks, they'll get the money they need to pay off whatever bill they were trying to pay off, and then they quit. And then they'll come back a month later and they'll reapply, and it's just this ever-revolving door. So it's difficult for a lot of companies to get skilled labor, especially on the lower end of the manufacturing jobs. Obviously, high-end skilled manufacturing is a little bit different. The wages are different, and can be because it's high-end. But I was speaking with the ex-senior VP of Target, actually just here in Kiln a week or so ago.
Wow.
And he pointed out that there are currently, today, before tariffs, 500,000 open, unfilled manufacturing jobs in the States.
Just before the tariffs.
Before the tariffs.
Because I mean, the aim nationally, right, the political platform that Trump won on and ran on is to bring those manufacturing jobs back, but we're kind of not addressing the elephant in the room, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Like we have manufacturing jobs today,
and no one's filling them already.
No one's filling them,
and that's we're seeing the same thing. And Mal can attest to this. As podcast producers, we're kind of touching a ton of industry, and it's projected that if someone can forego college and just go straight into a trade, learn a skill, you're going to get paid great, and then you can also create your own service-based company. But it's making more millionaires than most college degrees are, just by going into the trades, because there's such a deficit of work and labor there. So if you show up with some competence and a good business plan, you'll just skyrocket. And some 100%. Of our clients are doing that now. We have a plumbing company, and they their first year open, they did over $1 million in revenue. Just in a local small town, right? So that's the concept. But we're kind of plugged into the manufacturing through Mal's dad and also her brother-in-law. They're both machinists. Yeah. And these manufacturing jobs, like what would that be from your point of view? Like, is it people working in car factories or textiles, like people assembling things? What are a lot of these jobs that are just open?
So I think my understanding on it, and this is where I'm going to claim a little bit of ignorance. It's going to be the lower end manufacturing jobs that are open. I think the one thing we do well here in the United States is high end manufacturing. I think that's higher skilled work. It's higher paid. Even the auto industry workers, I mean, they make honestly a good livable wage now.
Right. And they're unionized as well.
They are.
So that helps.
So I think bringing high end, high tech manufacturing back to the States, for me, is a no-brainer because you can justify a higher cost of labor, and it's a job I think people would be proud to say they have, in some way. The issue with the current tariffs is they are blanket tariffs by country. And for me, it's common sense to know that that wasn't always the case. Like, I look up what's called HTS codes, harmonized tariff system codes, and we have to look it up product by product because historically each product or each category had a different tariff rate assigned to it. So some products that we knew we couldn't manufacture here, nor did we want to manufacture here, had as low as a 0% tariff coming in from other countries. And then having between like a 2 and a 5% tariff was normal. Some categories that we did want to have here in the States were higher, like 17, 18%. And so the book is, I just downloaded the newest version. It's well over 1,000 pages thick.
How new?
They update it regularly. So the one I downloaded was from April post the Liberation Day announcements because I've got to read up on a few of the sections. Yeah, this year post Liberation Day, like I've got the most current one because I have to. Like I got to be dialed on it.
Because I was going to say, I was imagining like a big thick book that was like printed on your desk.
Oh no, it's a PDF, thank goodness. But it's a PDF that's so big, I couldn't even upload it into Claude or ChatGPT. It was too big of a file for that because I was going to have them help me look up some of this stuff. And it was like, they're like, no, we don't want to deal with this. The AI is like, this is too much.
Even AI is like, no way, man.
Yeah, it's a lot. So coming back to that, the challenge with global tariffs or like a blanket tariff of say 46% against Vietnam.
Right.
It doesn't discriminate between the types of products coming in. So really low end.
Whereas the HTS codes, they do. They're very specific per product, per industry, per need. But a blanket tariff is kind of just leveling that.
It's leveling that. It doesn't make as much sense to me because sure, there's some things like chips, I think are a big topic. We definitely want to protect that. There's absolute strategic reason to manufacture like microchips
and
semiconductors here in the United States. Is there any strategic need to manufacture T-shirts?
Yeah, exactly.
Here in the States. Like there's not, and it's going to be not next to impossible to get U.S. labor to literally sit on a little sewing machine and sew for 8 hours a day. Like not going to happen.
That's the spectrum of manufacturing, right? There's the high end stuff because I know gunsmiths that are making really accurate competition rifles, right? And like super high end manufacturing, very, very a lot of pride, a lot of mastery in their craft as well. And then that's the other end of the manufacturing where it's just lowest bidder mass production of a T-shirt is a great example. Yeah, and that's I think too there might be something there too where I'm not an economist, I don't know, but I just know that hey, back in 1970, a guy with a $20 an hour job or $20 an hour, he had a house and a new truck, and let's just say he's a single guy, so there's not a ton of expenses, but he could afford a mortgage, he could afford a house, and now that's completely backwards. Yeah. And so a $20 an hour job for kind of that lower end manufacturing or even lower. Yeah, right?
Often $10-15 an hour.
Yeah, just to sew a shirt or, hem the last stage of the trousers that are making it to the Old Navy shop. That's not going to pay anybody's lifestyle.
Not at all.
And so the fact that we are consumers and we want a certain level of lifestyle, I don't think there's an American out there that doesn't want to improve, maybe upgrade the house or build the patio and, get the new car and get the earrings for the wife. And so, you just can't pay your bills and then also live your lifestyle on those jobs. Right. So
that's it.
Yeah. I can totally see why we're short.
Yep.
That makes so much sense.
So those are some of the challenges that I think we face with bringing things back to the U.S. And so now let's just talk about what's happening on the ground. Yeah. I have my team call, the target was to call 80 U.S. factories in the last 2 weeks because we assumed that with the global tariff, everybody would be rushing to onshore, like not only onshore, but bring it truly domestic. What we found is that's not the case.
Wow.
Almost every factory we talked to has said they still have plenty of capacity. They're seeing a slight uptick in requests for quotes, but it's not what they were expecting. The other side of that is I've spoken to close to 100 small business owners. When I say small business owners, really anywhere between about $1 million and $20 million in revenue is the small business owners we're talking to.
Yeah.
And almost all of them that I talked to had at some point tried to bring manufacturing back to the US. Typical cost, if they're manufacturing in China for $10 a unit, the typical cost to do that same product in the United States is $20 to $30 a unit. It's 2 to 3 times higher to manufacture it here. And so they're looking at, well, if I pay 125% tariff, that's about the same as it costs me to manufacture it here, but I already have a good relationship. Everything's set up. All I have to do is place reorders. My factory's treated me really well. It's a big risk to now try to go find a new factory and take the year sometimes it requires to develop new tooling, and the cost of developing new tooling and like the expense to get everything set up. They're like, we just kind of hope things get better, so we're either going to leave it there. That's one option. Or the other is they're looking primarily at other Southeast Asia countries. Like a lot of people have a ton of interest in Vietnam, a lot of interest in India, a lot of interest in Thailand and Malaysia and these other Southeast Asian countries because the costs are closer to comparable to what they're getting from China.
Right.
A lot of interest in Mexico. But what small business owners are finding, and this has been an interesting theme that's come up, is they're finding that nowhere in the world is it as easy to get things done as it is in China. So the American consumer,
from like a purely manufacturing standpoint, it's just they have don't they have the best infrastructure for that?
100%,
just churning out whatever you want to make a yo-yo, you got it. You want to make a gyro or like almost all of my camera equipment is made in China. Like DJI is a Chinese company.
Phenomenal company.
They make amazing camera gimbals and everything else, right? And so, that's fascinating to think about. And I kind of cut you off.
Well, I was saying that it's a really interesting discrepancy between U.S. consumers and U.S. business owners. I talked to a lot of business owners. I've been doing this for 10 years. And when people find out I work in China or have worked in China, they're like, oh, you're bringing over that cheap Chinese garbage. You talk to business owners, and it's almost like this shameful admittance. They're like, honestly, my Chinese factory does such a good job. Like, it's going to be hard to top their quality.
Yeah.
And they make it so easy. In fact, I was just talking to a company earlier today, huge company. They're probably in the 80 to 100 million a year category, like big internal team.
Wow.
They had manufactured in the US back in the 70s, and they could not manufacture their own products for less than what they could have their Chinese manufacturers do it for. So, a lot of it went over there, which I think is some of the issue that we're trying to resolve right now. But they've got such good relationships with their suppliers. Their products are all highly rated, 5-star products on Amazon, really good quality. And the factories make it easy. They just say, hey, we want a new, they actually do make tripods. I'm looking at your camera.
Yeah.
They're like, we want a new tripod. And the factory's like, great, give us the specs, and they just deal with it. Wow. And their complaint was, hey, we've tried to quote this in the US and Mexico and Vietnam, and, the factory wants to make the poles for us, but they won't do the little plastic clips, and they won't do the packaging, and they won't do the foam over the poles, and they want us to order the raw material for them. And they're like, we don't have the time to go do all of that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it takes. Literally anywhere outside of China, you've got to order the aluminum. You've got to have it shipped to the aluminum extrusion plant. You've got to get the poles. Then you've got to find somebody who's going to do your plastic injection molding for the clips. And then you've got to find somebody else who's willing to assemble it all together. And then you've got to talk to your packaging company, and you got to get that ordered, and you got to coordinate all that.
Yeah.
Yourself. Chinese suppliers are doing it for you right now. Nowhere else in the world does it exist at that scale. Yeah. And I think it's shocking a lot of small business owners of how much more involved they're going to have to be moving forward.
That makes so much sense. So it's convenience at scale.
It is.
And they're delivering quality stuff.
Yep.
Depending, I'm sure there are plenty of Chinese products that are not good. And but the good ones, they do very well.
They do really. I mean,
They
like
do really well.
most of the high quality products in your home were built there. Things like, I mean, one of the most common ones is your iPhone.
Yeah.
People think that's a great quality product. It's built in China. Foxconn, been by their factory 100 times.
Yeah, it's like when the quality is needed, they can deliver it. And then, but if you go to like Harbor Freight, store and you go buy a sander or something like that, which is funny because I think a lot of like higher end stuff, I think components or if not the whole product is made in China. But then they have like the knockoff version of it that's just horribly built. But if you go to Harbor Freight, you're getting a piece of garbage.
You do
for the most part. I mean, they still probably sell some good things, but
that's driven a lot from Harbor Freight saying, hey, this tool has to come in at this cost. It's this crazy cost. How can you do it? The factories are like, well, we're going to have to throw out these 4 components that make it good and like
that's it.
Cut some corners, but we can do it. So here you go, Harbor Freight.
So they're more of they're cost driven.
They're cost driven.
That's kind of their brand. That's their identity. Is like you're going to get a screaming deal, but you might be screaming because you lost your thumb.
It's just a thumb. Like you got 2 thumbs.
Yeah, but hey, you saved money. And some people are like that, man. They're like, I'll lose my thumb to save $100.
There's a butt for every seat, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. So now you kind of had some controversial. I guess I don't want to call it controversial, but it's not in the mainstream of thought because I think a lot of news outlets and a lot of social media influencers that are political and a lot of like podcasters and stuff that I'm plugged into, right? I think they do a great job of giving the people the information as opposed to, mainstream media. But I think there's a lot of like they're riding the high of, what we want to have happen as a nation is we want our country to be better.
Yeah.
Right. We want to hold people accountable. And that can't stop just because we like the guy in the office, or it can't only start if we hate the guy who's in office, right? And that's my thing is the reason I was interested in talking about this is just because you're about the small business owner.
That's it.
And you're in the trenches right now with these small business owners, and this is what's happening. So what's the main narrative around tariffs and like, if you've kind of touched on it already, but the actuality, if you could sum it up in kind of an elevator pitch, the main narrative is this, but the actuality is that.
So the main narrative I hear is that this is a negotiating tactic and that we're going to make trade better than it's ever been. And we're going to bring a bunch of manufacturing jobs back to America. The reality that I've seen. Let's focus on the small business owners first. I don't think anybody was asking for more manufacturing jobs back in the States. Like I said, there's 500,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs. Set aside maybe some strategic reasons to bring back some sectors, which I 100% agree with.
Yeah.
The trade-off is not being talked about enough. So 95% of Americans are employed by small business owners. 95%. It's not Amazon. It's not Google. It's not these big giants that are employing the vast majority of Americans. It's small business owners. I have talked to so many who are really fearful about the future of their company in the next 12 months. They don't know if they can weather the storm. Most small business owners aren't sitting on giant cash reserves. I've talked to dozens who had production either finished, on the water, or nearly finished, who are just abandoning their goods in China because they cannot afford a $50,000 or $60,000 tariff payment that they weren't planning on. So they're just opting to leave their goods over there and see if anything changes.
Okay, so it's not like a full. It's an abandonment at the moment, but it could change. They're kind of holding on to something.
They're holding on to the hope that we are able to negotiate things with China and get a better situation going.
But it's, for all intents and purposes, it's halted.
It's halted.
It's halted.
So we can already see that in the port at Long Beach. Read the news. It's the shipping lanes from China have basically ground to a halt. There's almost nothing coming in because people, they just can't afford those bills. You look at big businesses, they've got more cash reserves, but they're also importing more. So sometimes their unplanned tariffs bills are in the hundreds of millions.
Right.
And even them, a lot of them are like, nah, let's just maybe not bring a bunch of stuff in right now and see if this changes.
Yeah, just hold off.
I've talked to small business owners who are already planning layoffs if things don't change. Business owners that are just, if they don't have inventory to sell, they don't have cash flow, which means they're out of business, they're done. So what's the trade-off that's not being talked about? It's that we're trying to bring low-wage manufacturing jobs back at the cost of what?
Right. Yeah. What's the risk? What's your risk mitigation?
Yeah.
Going into and what's the time frame they're giving you? Like, are they? I mean, they're hopeful, like they're on pause. It feels like people are holding their breath, but
I wouldn't say they're holding their breath. They're scrambling to find solutions. So while they're scrambling in the background to find suppliers anywhere but China, because at least those tariffs are on hold for 90 days, and a lot of the countries, non-Chinese countries, are proactively trying to figure something out. You know, we can go into that nuance, which is really interesting too. But the challenge is you have China's 1.4 billion people. It's a massive country. They have raw materials. They have all this manufacturing infrastructure. You go to Vietnam, there's 30 million people in Vietnam. Like the scale, you can't touch China. So you have big companies like your Nikes, your Adidas, your Apples, you name it. They were already second sourcing in countries like Vietnam, Taiwan, you know, outside of like the super high tariff thing. And so, you know, I've got a team in China who's already told me that the big factories that manufacture for the big US brands, they've just sent all their workers on holiday. So they're all but shut down almost overnight.
Wow.
Those companies are moving all of their stuff to these small countries like Vietnam so they can import, you know, at lower tariffs at least. What does that mean for the small business?
Yeah.
There's no room for them.
Kind of just going to get swallowed up by the machine.
Yep. So once again, we're in a situation where, like COVID, where big businesses thrive and your mom and pop, your Main Street, your small business, the backbone of America is really significantly at risk of being crushed again.
This is interesting because I think it's not painted like this. And, you know, after COVID, if I survived barely as a small business during COVID, and now this, and you know, not every single small business is like completely reliant on this tariff, right? But the ones, plenty of them are.
More than you would think, Blake. Like here's a shocking one. So one of my employees, she's got a good friend who does hair extensions, service business. Wouldn't even think in a million years she's going to be impacted by the tariffs.
As soon as you said hair extensions, I was like, oh, yeah, that's an Asian product.
It's an Asian product. She is the primary breadwinner for her family here in Utah because she makes a great living doing hair extensions. She's very well known for it. They're already out of stock. All the supply is gone. Everybody freaked out, bought the hair extension, and she's like, well, I don't know how to put food on my table now.
Oh, no.
Service business.
Yeah.
How many service businesses is this going to ripple effect into?
I see. Yeah, because I'm seeing it now. Yeah, I redact my last statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see almost every small business, if you have any type of product or service, or you have to buy tools, or like us with cameras, DJI, like anything like that, microchips. Yeah, and so it might not hit me as hard up front, but 6 months from now, a year from now, where's it going to hit?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I redact my last statement. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So, okay, interesting. So I think this is extremely important to talk about, and I'm sure we could dive deeper in this too. Maybe we follow that one up for another session. But I'm also really interested. What solutions is Product EVHO pushing? What are you guys finding? You know, you've been talking to all these people. I think it was you've talked to 80 factories.
Yeah, 80 U.S. factories,
and then even more small businesses than that you are interfacing with, or potentially trying to interface with. But yeah, what are some solutions? What are the talks? You know, is it all hopelessness, or are people finding avenues or ideas?
It's a scramble, and people are trying to make sense of the new world we're in. Mm-hmm. I would say about 1 in 20 is 100% committed to bringing work back to the U.S. They don't even want to look at other countries. 1 in 20, 1 in 30. The rest are just get me out of China as fast as you can. And then when we start to talk about the realities of getting out of China, like we talked about, it's a lot more hands-on, and you've got to go deeper into the supply chain and manage everything. They're going, oh crap, we are barely keeping up with everything we're supposed to do now. So how are we going to do that? That's one of the things we can help with. We are really good at understanding the pros and cons of manufacturing in Vietnam versus Thailand versus China versus the USA, and we're bringing data and analytics to those decisions that people are really fearful about making the wrong decisions because of how deep the implications go if they make a wrong decision. And so we're just bringing data into that. We'll do analysis for them and both on cost and timing and strategy and everything else to help them choose where they might want to focus their time. And then what we do is we just manage their supply chain for them. We make it easier. So like they're really loving working with Chinese factories because the factory manages the whole supply chain behind the scenes to get them a finished good. That's what we do. So we'll manage all the different individual suppliers behind the scenes to get you a finished good and make your life as comparable to what it was as possible.
So there is hope.
There's hope.
It's just through Product EVHO.
We're your only answer.
Yeah, I love that though, because it's going to be a scramble. It's going to be a shift. It's going to be uncomfortable, whether you support it or not. Like it's just you got to adapt kind of thing, right?
You do.
And like we were talking about, your state and the bureaucracy that you live under, the legislation that controls those things might be a factor. And that I think from my experience, if I was navigating this area as a business owner, just running a media company, if I was reliant on these manufacturing more, if it was more on my plate than it currently should be, I guess, I would want a really experienced team around me.
Yeah.
And so if I do need multiple sources of materials, I need some rubber. I need someone to source the foam and everything because I got a factory that'll do the legs. We'll keep the tripod example. I got a factory that'll make the tubular aluminum legs, telescoping legs, but I don't have anybody to do my injection molding for the clasps and for the camera mount or the gimbal. And so that's where you guys could help.
Yep.
And then like hopefully the chaos and the scramble settles and then it's a workable system.
I hope so. I think, the one thing I'll interject that's maybe a little bit more pessimistic is I think a lot of people are very hopeful that things will get sorted out with China soon, quickly. And I don't think that's the case. I do think we'll get things straightened out with other countries sooner or later. I think in the next 3 to 6 months, we'll start to see some progress. The reality of negotiating 100+ trade deals in 90 days is that's not going to happen in 90 days, but can a few start to come through? Sure. So I think there's going to be progress there. But with China, I think there are too many real issues that are at odds. Aside from the fact that you have two very strong-willed, very ego-driven, very powerful leaders at odds with each other. Xi's said a few times that he's willing to come to the negotiation table. He just wants mutual respect. Trump has offered, I think just this week, Tuesday, that he's willing to back off on the tariffs, potentially to 50 or 60% rate to show good faith. But behind the scenes, both countries are scrambling for allies. I think the U.S. certainly has some allies that are going to stay, but we've ruffled the feathers of some of our long-term allies. Japan is not happy with us. They're not having it. Singapore's not happy with us. Canada's not happy with us. India's feeling really disrespected about the way things went down. And so there's some traditional allies that we have that are maybe at risk. Maybe not. I hope we can repair that. But China's absolutely, they're taking advantage of the fact that we upset some people and they're trying to work their way into maybe some doors that were closed to them before right now behind the scenes. So that's going on. And I think that's going to make things complicated to get resolution. So
more bumps ahead.
More bumps ahead. The biggie is one of the things Xi has said is he's willing to come to the negotiating table, but Taiwan is one of his big talking points. And if you know anything about geopolitics, Taiwan is a hotbed of a disaster waiting to happen between the U.S. and China. And so if that is one of his big talking points, I don't see a quick and easy resolution to this situation between us and China.
And then there's also, too, another factor. You just reminded me to bringing up Taiwan. There's another factor, another element of the tariffs. I have a lot of friends that are military intelligence that I served with, and then they later got into military intel, or they're in, special forces units and stuff that I'm still in talks with. And China is a huge, huge security risk because of all the app data. Like, that's why TikTok is being banned.
100%.
And all of our electronics are being made there. And there's people that have been on podcasts, they're talking about spy and malware found in like a smart vacuum, like really kind of nefarious stuff when you're talking about national security and things like that. And previous administrations have just been open the door to all of that, right? Yep. And you can get into like the reasons we left Afghanistan, if you're understanding what Afghanistan is with lithium mining and the struggle that the Afghani government was doing with China. And then it was like, all of a sudden we withdraw and then China gets all the, right? So there's a lot of weird stuff there. I think that's another, like, it's almost like the coin has three sides. It's like national security is a huge, huge thing. That was another thing that current administration ran on. And so I almost think that the government itself has more motives, and Trump has more reasons to stand strong and firm and, use his ego for the advantage of national security, which I understand. And as a former Marine, I'm like, we got to be secure. Yep. But it's going to hurt a lot. I think that's your big message, is like, more bumps ahead.
More bumps ahead. Don't expect. I've talked to a lot of business owners who are hopeful that things will get sorted out. Again, I think they will with some of these smaller countries. I don't see a quick resolution with China, but they are so deeply integrated into the supply chain. Yeah. Even in supporting these smaller countries in raw materials and semi-finished goods, like
they've made themselves such a valuable player on the manufacturing scene that the more you talk to me about this, the more, and I don't want to say don't be not hopeful, but maybe adjust your time frame.
That's it.
So if you're hopeful that it's going to fix in a year, check yourself. Yeah, is that fair?
That's fair. That's totally fair. I think, for the good of the world, this will hurt. They've talked about ripping off the Band-Aid. I'll stay neutral on that. It is for sure going to be painful. Yeah. Long term, I won't define that horizon, but I'll say more than 5 years. Yeah. Maybe more than 10 years. I think the world probably will be a better place as a result of this. But to your point, like, a lot of people are hopeful that things will switch by summer. I don't think there's any practical way that's a possibility. Yeah. Minimum of a couple year time horizon is what I'm looking at.
Like best case scenario.
Best case scenario, I think, is 2-3 years. Yeah. More realistically, 5-ish. 5 to 7 years. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. I think being realistic, managing expectations. Like, you think about any relationship you've had, your spouse or your business partners. Those relationships tend to sour when the expectations aren't being managed.
That's it.
And I think that's very wise to kind of pull back and look at it with a more realistic thing. So more bumps ahead. Buckle up. Like, Americans have constantly overcome so many things in our past. Yeah. And, I don't think we'd back down either, but it's kind of humbling to think about. And I think we really need to hold our politicians accountable, even our local and state politicians. Yeah. Right. Hey, make this easier for us to catch up. Yeah. Let's get rid of the red tape. Let's get rid of the bureaucracy. If we really need to build infrastructure, like you're saying, like, we got to keep pace.
If we're serious about it, it's going to take that type of collaboration between local, state, and federal governments and investment. Wow. And, it's all hands on deck to get things done in 5 years. Yeah. 10 years, it's pretty good collaboration. But if we're not going to get along, if things aren't going to change, like, forget it. It's going to be tough to ever get caught up.
That's an amazing message right there. Yeah. So it's like, curb your expectations, be realistic, and, like, work together.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, dude, so on that national security note, though, what's your thoughts on that? Is it as big a risk as people think, or from your experience, or is it not something you could touch on? I don't know where.
like the national. Yeah, that's why, when I mentioned bringing semiconductors back, microchips back, I couldn't agree more that that's like 100% necessary. Like the whole TikTok ban, I was the biggest proponent of that. It is a national security threat. The reason it got undone still baffles me. If national security is what you run on, like why would you? It actually got taken down. I know that's unpopular. Sorry, all Gen Z that love it.
Yeah.
But it actually got taken down and then
reversed.
It reversed, and I don't understand that if national security is your thing, because like that was one thing that was bipartisan in the House. They agreed, like, this is a threat. Let's take it down.
Yeah, and it's when you understand. I was talking to the tech guys upstairs because Kiln gives us that advantage of just tons of talented industry people here. So yeah, and Blake with Blake Technologies was like, dude, I could show you what these apps are doing with your data, and you'll be appalled. And I've heard it before. And I'm not even close. I can't even articulate it well, so I'll avoid it. But it's jaw dropping what they could do. And then when you understand how their tech is in everything, I'm totally with you on the microchip thing.
Yep. But
so it is a real national security issue. But like T-shirts or mechanical parts and stuff like that with no chips, with no antennas, nothing electronic. Like I just need gears for mountain bikes, or I need parts for my factory.
That's it.
Right. I make a completely different product, but I need all these specialty parts to make for the milling machines, for the CNC machines, so like the manufacturing requires manufacturing.
It does.
It's awesome. It's amazing, like engineering marvels that we get to just experience, but it's so nuanced.
It's nuanced, and that's where it gets mind-bending about how deeply interconnected we are globally, like way more than we ever have. So if we were impacted in the 30s when we were primarily manufacturing for ourselves and exporting, can you even imagine the impact today when it is so much more intertwined and global?
I see. Yeah. It's now a complete spider web.
Yep.
You pluck one string, everyone's going to feel it.
That's it.
So this has been really enlightening. Well, any other messages you'd like to say? Any client of Product EVHO or potential client?
The one thing I would say is, given that things aren't likely to change soon, and seeing so many people just scramble and kind of freak out, I would say take a breath, take a beat. And I'm a big fan of math. So, look at your products objectively. I think there's opportunity to find the couple that are maybe selling the highest, that are the easiest to pivot out and away from China, and maybe just focus on those two right now instead of your entire catalog.
Oh, I see.
It could be an opportunity too to get rid of some underperforming products. So like go through and figure out what's actually driving profit in your business, get rid of some of those. And there are some, I've talked to a lot of small business owners that are still doing, even if they're $5 million a year business, $10 million a year business, some of their individual products, if they've got a catalog of 100, are only doing 1,000 units or so a year.
Oh, wow.
If they're profitable, maybe you leave those in China. That's going to be next to impossible to do anywhere else. But that's okay, because now maybe if you look at the 80-20 rule, maybe those smaller products are only 20% of your profits anyway. Maybe you've got the top 10 or 20% that are 80% of your profits. Maybe prioritize those so it doesn't feel so overwhelming to move an entire catalog of products all at once. Where we talked about having to find individual suppliers for each component, multiply that across a catalog of 100 products, and it can be like all of a sudden you're dealing with potentially 1,000 suppliers, and it can melt your brain. And that's where I feel a lot of people are, is just they feel overwhelmed. Where do I even start? I don't even know which country to look at. I don't even know which product. I don't know how we're going to do this. Because China, again, is easy. Like they can manufacture their whole catalog in China, probably within a couple square miles of each other, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
It's just different. And so, take a beat, look at your catalog, figure out what's driving your profits, and prioritize maybe a couple of your most profitable products, and just tackle those, and then tackle the next, and just take it one step at a time.
That's like, that's how military guys are trained.
Yeah.
When you're in first responders too, police, like if you're in an emergency, it's just breathe, focus on what you can control. And then one step at a time, take action towards one thing. And then pretty soon you've solved quite a bit.
That's it.
That is some really good wisdom.
Yeah.
Man, I might have to call you here and be like, hey, where are people getting camera equipment? Because we need it,
Happy to help, man.
Oh, man. Well, this has been really insightful, man. I hope to continue these conversations with you because I've had the pleasure of having you on some of our clients' shows and just hearing your vast knowledge of manufacturing. It's really cool. And they're doing some cool stuff at Product EVHO. Where can people find you?
Easiest place is productevo.io. You can also find me on Josh Taylor, or Joshua Taylor, I think it is, on LinkedIn. But yeah, hit us up. We're happy to have a conversation. And Blake, thanks for taking a minute, inviting me on your podcast. It's been a ton of fun to be here and go deep with you. You're a smart dude.
Oh, thanks, man. And I hope we please disseminate this to anybody that can help from your knowledge. Just send the link around. This is going to be great.
Happy to.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Blake.